I suppose every family carries its own hierarchy, its own unspoken rules about who matters most and who exists in the shadows. Mine was no different. From the time I could string a sentence together, I was told to be grateful. Grateful for the roof above my head. Grateful for the name I bore. Grateful even for the crumbs of attention that trickled my way. Gratitude became a leash, the kind you hardly notice tightening until one day you cannot breathe. The Marlowe family presented itself as a dynasty. Wealth built on property deals and polished with charity galas. My mother Evelyn handled public relations like a queen adjusting her crown. My sister Sophia was the golden child always bathed in the soft glow of admiration. The youngest Ava was doted on for being charming and flighty, forgiven for every misstep. And then there was me, Olivia, dutiful, quiet, useful only when an extra pair of hands was needed. I had trained as an auditor, though not the type my family valued. They wanted me at Marlowe Capital rubber stamping their deals, nodding through their valuations. Instead, I chose forensic accounting at a nonprofit, the kind that digs into misuse of housing grants and public trust. That choice marked me as suspect, as if honesty were a betrayal. There were earlier betrayals too, the smaller, more personal kind that erode confidence. I remember the year I covered my father's shortfall on a property tax bill. The amount was not insignificant, $22,000 scraped from my own careful savings. I watched him smile the following month in a photograph from St. Bart's, cocktail in hand. Another time, Sophia convinced me to co-sign a loan for a boutique she fancied. When it collapsed, she shrugged. The debt collectors came after me. My mother waved it away. That is what sisters are for. Even when I did as asked, acknowledgement never came. When my certification results arrived after months of grueling study, I placed the letter on the kitchen counter. Evelyn glanced at it, then redirected her gaze to Ava's latest piano competition. That same evening, the family went out to celebrate Ava's third-place finish. My accomplishment was never mentioned again. It was not hatred exactly. It was dismissal, the kind that makes you doubt whether you exist at all. Yet, for all the slights I kept giving, I lent Sophia $8,000 when her engagement ring was repossessed for non-payment. I covered Ava's tuition gap one semester when her frivolous spending caught up with her. Each time I told myself they would see me differently. Each time I was wrong. Those debts lingered like shadows, never repaid, never spoken of. Still, when the invitation arrived, an embossed card for Sophia's rooftop engagement party, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps here was a chance to stand not as the errand child, not as the invisible accountant, but simply as a sister. The card read, "Housewarming and Celebration of Union" in calligraphy. Beneath it, a dress code, black tie. I pressed the heavy paper between my fingers and wondered whether paper could hold the weight of sincerity. I told myself not to expect much, but expectation is a stubborn thing. It creeps in even as you vow to shut it out. I imagined a toast, perhaps a slide with family photographs, maybe even a moment where I was acknowledged as part of the circle. That small wish carried me through long days of work, combing through ledgers that told stories of fraud and neglect. At night, I rehearsed polite laughter, the kind that masks hurt. The party loomed like a storm cloud. I noticed subtle signals, a cousin hinting that seating was tight, Evelyn reminding me to dress appropriately, not like one of your nonprofit mixers. And yet, I bought new shoes, polished but not extravagant, and pressed my one evening gown until it looked nearly new. Hope makes fools of us all. The week leading to the celebration, I caught wind of something else. An old attorney friend of my grandmother, Aria Hale, left me a voicemail. Her tone was cautious, deliberate. "There are documents you should see," she said. "Sealed documents tied to your grandmother's trust. Do not mention this call." I saved the message, my finger trembling. It sounded like nothing and everything. I set it aside, thinking I would follow up after the party. If you are listening now, perhaps you have felt that mixture of dread and longing before a family gathering. It is a peculiar ache knowing you will likely be diminished again, yet wishing against all evidence that this time might be different. I carried that ache with me as the date circled closer. And on that night, standing beneath Manhattan's skyline, champagne flutes clinking around me, I would learn just how sharp betrayal can feel when delivered in public with polished smiles and practiced cruelty. The leash of gratitude was about to be yanked hard enough to break. The evening air atop the Midtown rooftop was warm touched with the hum of jazz and the flicker of fairy lights strung along glass railings. Manhattan glittered all around towers glowing against the dusk. Guests mingled in gowns and tailored suits, their voices blending into a tide of congratulations for Sophia and her fiancé. I stood near the edge, champagne flute in hand, watching the scene, as though it belonged to someone else. The master of ceremonies began his introductions, a slideshow of family milestones projected against a sleek white wall. Smiles, applause, more smiles. My name never appeared. When the photos of our childhood rolled by, a curious edit erased me. A family of 4 where once there had been 5. I felt my chest tighten. Perhaps a mistake, I thought. But mistakes of omission had always been the family's specialty. Sophia glowed beneath the spotlight, eyes shining as she thanked everyone for coming. Beside her, my mother Evelyn stood with the posture of a queen, ready to smooth every wrinkle in the family's image. When she took the microphone, her words were sharpened knives hidden in silk. "Some children bring honor to their name," she said, glancing at Sophia with pride. "And some choose other paths. We let them stand among us out of pity, not merit." Laughter rippled from one side of the room. I felt the sting rise hot in my throat. My gaze dropped to the bubbling surface of the champagne. My father, Richard, added his own barb later in the evening. He approached me near the buffet, his voice clipped and low. "Morality doesn't pay dividends. You will sign with Marlowe Capital or you will have nothing. Consider this your final warning." I tried to steady myself, though the world seemed to sway. "I already accepted another offer," I said. My voice was calm, but my hand trembled around the glass. His jaw tightened. "Then you are no longer a Marlowe. This house, this name, never yours." The cruelty was deliberate, timed so nearby guests could overhear. I excused myself, heart pounding. Across the room, Sophia leaned in close to her fiancé, whispering behind a hand. Ava giggled, her phone screen lighting up as she typed into some group chat. The golden halo above them seemed brighter in contrast to the shadow cast over me. I tried to leave quietly, but humiliation does not allow quiet exits. At the valet desk, my card was declined. I tried another. Declined. The attendant gave me a look of pity, and behind me I could hear someone laugh. My phone buzzed with alerts, emails from the bank, notifications of accounts frozen, credit lines revoked. A landlord's message appeared. "Your guarantor has withdrawn. You have 30 days to vacate." The speed of it was breathtaking. One moment I was sipping champagne, the next the floor of my life gave way. I stumbled out onto the street, the city's glow indifferent to my unraveling. Taxis streamed past, laughter drifted down from the rooftop, muffled by glass and distance. That night I carried what I could to a friend's spare couch in Brooklyn. Maya, patient and kind, made tea and set out blankets. She did not ask questions I could not answer. As I lay awake, the enormity of what had just happened pressed down. Cut off not only from money but from belonging. In one night I had been erased. Sometime near dawn my phone buzzed again. A new voicemail, the same measured voice from days before. Arya Hale, the attorney. "Olivia, we must meet. It concerns your grandmother's trust. There are clauses your parents never mentioned. Distribution triggers. You need to see them. Call me back." I replayed it twice, staring at the ceiling in Maya's dim apartment. My heart steadied. For the first time that night, despair gave way to something colder, clearer. They thought they had ended me with one swift cut. But perhaps there was more in the story. My grandmother had left behind something sealed, waiting to be opened. The following afternoon, I met Aria Hale in a quiet coffee shop tucked away on a side street in Tribeca. She was already seated when I arrived, her briefcase resting beside her chair, steam rising from a mug untouched. Aria had been my grandmother Rose's attorney for decades, and though I had not seen her in years, the sight of her calm eyes steadied me. Olivia, she greeted softly, sliding a heavy envelope across the table. The seal was unbroken, wax stamped with my grandmother's initials. Your grandmother prepared this addendum. She instructed me to release it only when you qualified professionally or reached the age of 30. Passing the CPA exam met the trigger. I traced the edges of the envelope, afraid and eager in equal measure. What is in it? Aria leaned forward. Her trust. A Delaware dynasty trust. It holds considerable assets by now valued at $8.6 million. Your parents acted as trustees, but the addendum changes that. It excludes their power of attorney and specifies that if you pursued your own professional path, your portion would transfer into an independent living trust under your control. The language is explicit. My breath caught. They used it, didn't they? She nodded gravely. They pledged it as collateral for a general partner commitment in a Texas acquisition, a violation of the spendthrift clause. The law is on your side, Olivia. You have the right to petition Delaware Chancery Court for immediate relief, removal of trustees, and a full accounting of the past decade. I opened the envelope with careful fingers. Inside lay two documents, a notarized addendum and a small flash drive. I slipped the drive into my laptop. The screen lit up with my grandmother's face, older, but still bearing that steady, piercing gaze I remembered from childhood. Her voice, though faint, was clear. If you are watching this, my dear, then you have chosen the path of principle, not convenience. This trust is yours. I forbid its misuse. If ever it is treated as collateral, it must move at once to your independent living trust. I love this family, but I will not allow them to chain you for their benefit. Use this gift to stand free. I sat frozen, the cafe's clatter fading away. Tears pricked my eyes, not from sadness, but from the weight of vindication. My grandmother had seen me. She had known the dismissals, the quiet erasures, and had carved a shield against them. Aria placed a second folder on the table. Here are escrow instructions. Once filed, assets will transfer within 72 hours into the Olivia Living Trust. We must also prepare a petition to compel accounting and seek surcharge for misuse. I recommend you retain separate counsel. I can remain as witness and executor of her wishes, but you will need an active litigator. I nodded slowly. I know someone. Lynn Park. Sharp, direct. She will take this on. That night, back on Maya's couch, I watched the video again. My grandmother's image flickered on the small screen, her frail hand folded over the papers. Do not be afraid, she whispered in closing. Family is not measured by blood alone. Choose your own. The words rooted in me stronger than anger. Anger burns hot, then fades. But purpose hardens like stone. I called Lynn Park the next morning, arranging a meeting. We would prepare filings. We would open escrow. We would not ask permission. As I set the phone down, a new message flashed across the screen. Evelyn's voice, syrupy and deliberate. Come home, Olivia. Your father regrets his tone. Let us talk this through like family. I laughed quietly. Too late. The balance had shifted. They thought the night on the rooftop had finished me. They did not know I held a sealed envelope that could turn the ground beneath their feet to sand. The law office overlooked the Hudson, its walls paneled with glass that reflected the gray of an early morning. I sat with Aria Hale on one side, the new folder of documents resting in front of me. Beside us was Lynn Park, calm and precise, her notes already organized in a slim binder. Across the polished table sat my family, Richard, Evelyn, and Sophia. Their entrance had been a performance, all perfume and posture, as though they owned the very air in the room. Richard wasted no time. He slid a glossy packet toward me, his hand heavy. The integration agreement, he announced. Sign it and all this unpleasantness dissolves. You will receive a lifetime annuity. Respectable, comfortable. But you will not interfere with family business. I opened the packet. The words leapt out: assignment of beneficiary interests transfer into Marlowe Holdings LLC managed exclusively by the general partners, my parents. In exchange, I would receive a small annual distribution. It was a cage lined with velvet, nothing more. Evelyn smiled thinly. Consider this generosity. You would be rid of the burden of responsibility, free to continue your little non-profit work without distraction. Sophia leaned in, her voice syrupy sweet. It is a good offer, Liv. Better than you deserve. I looked to Lynn. She spoke evenly, her finger tracing the clauses. This document strips my client of all meaningful rights. She would forfeit control, lose any say in investment or distribution, and surrender her independent trust into an LLC she does not manage. In plain words, it is theft dressed as family unity. Richard's face reddened. Sign the integration or sign yourself out of this family. His voice echoed against the glass, the city below carrying on oblivious. I laid the packet aside and drew out my own folder. On top was the stamped receipt, escrow instructions, acknowledged assets scheduled to transfer into the Olivia Living Trust within 72 hours. Beneath it, a copy of the petition already filed in Delaware Chancery Court, removal of trustee's demand for 10 years of accounting surcharge for misuse of corpus as collateral. I slid them forward. Silence fell. The air seemed to thicken. Evelyn's painted smile cracked at the edges. Sophia's hand froze halfway to her glass of water. Richard leaned forward, knuckles whitening on the table. You would drag us into court. You would destroy your own bloodline. I met his gaze. I did not destroy anything. You did when you used what was not yours to pledge your deals. I am merely restoring what my grandmother intended. Arya cleared her throat softly. The addendum is binding. It excludes power of attorney, and the video evidence is admissible. Olivia is within her rights. Evelyn's mask slipped entirely. This isn't your house. You're tolerated here. Do you think a court will side with you against us? Lynn answered before I could. The court will not be asked to choose sides. It will be asked to enforce trust law. And the law is remarkably clear. For a moment, no one moved. Then, as if on cue, a courier entered, handing Richard a folder. He opened it, scanning rapidly. I recognized the cover sheet, the official filing stamp from Delaware. Their motions had been served. Richard slammed the folder shut. You think you have won. You have no idea what storms you have called down. But storms no longer frightened me. I had lived too long in their shadow. Now sunlight pressed against the glass walls, glinting off the river. I gathered my papers, stood, and left them sitting in their silence. The leash of gratitude had snapped, and in its place was something unyielding: freedom backed by law. The first tremor came from a phone screen. I was in Lynn Park's office reviewing drafts for the accounting request when her assistant rushed in with a tablet. You need to see this, she said. On the screen was a tweet from a well-known finance journalist. Attached were screenshots of a group chat titled Marlowe Core. The words were damning. Ava's casual message. Dad says we leveraged Liv's trust for the Austin deal. If it implodes, just delete this chain, LOL. A laughing emoji punctuated the line. Another reply from Sophia. She'll never find out. She's too busy with her charity audits. Within minutes, the screenshots were everywhere, retweeted, dissected, headlined with phrases like dynasty scandal and trust betrayal. Richard called my phone twice that afternoon. I let it ring. Evelyn sent a text. Damage control meeting at once. You'll ruin us all. I deleted it. For once, the ruin was not mine to bear. 2 nights later, the Marlowe family hosted a black tie gala at a midtown ballroom, a fundraiser for affordable housing. Irony, I thought, as I walked beneath chandeliers glittering over tables dressed in linen and gold. The room buzzed with donors, cameras, and whispered speculation. I had been invited as a guest speaker on accountability in housing finance. The stage was mine whether they liked it or not. I spoke plainly steady into the microphone. In this city, trust is often treated like currency. But a trust is not collateral. It is a promise. Break it, and you do not just break law, you break family. Applause rippled, some hesitant, some bold. I saw Richard's jaw tighten across the room. Evelyn's smile looked painted on too bright brittle. Then the reporter struck. A hand shot up, microphone in grasp. Olivia, can you comment on the petition you filed in Delaware? The one alleging misuse of your own trust by your parents. Gasps spread through the hall like fire through dry grass. Cameras swiveled, lights glared. Richard half rose from his chair, hissing, "This is slander." Evelyn gripped his sleeve, her own lips trembling as though she could hold the image together by force of will. Sophia stared at the tablecloth, pale. I held the microphone with both hands steady. The petition speaks for itself. I will not litigate here, but I will say this family is not a license to exploit. My grandmother's wishes were clear. I intend to honor them. The applause this time was louder, deliberate. Some donors stood. Others whispered to one another, sliding their checkbooks discreetly back into purses and jackets. Reputations erode not with thunder, but with murmurs in gilded rooms. Afterward, I walked past Richard. His whisper followed me like smoke. You are setting fire to everything. I did not look back. No, I said. I am letting the truth breathe. By the time the gala ended, the headlines were written. Heiress petitions court against parents. Trust fund scandal erupts at gala. Their empire had been polished by image for decades. Tonight, under crystal chandeliers that polish cracked, exposing rust beneath. And I long the invisible one stood clear in the light. 6 months later, the city felt different. Perhaps it was only me who had changed, but the skyline no longer loomed. I had rented a small studio in Williamsburg, one room with tall windows that caught the morning light across the river. The walls held nothing of Marlowe grandeur, no portraits, no trophies, just shelves of books, a desk, and the sound of my own breathing in peace. The Olivia Living Trust had transferred in full as the escrow instructions dictated. The Chancery Court removed my parents as trustees, ordered a 10-year accounting, and imposed surcharges for the misuse of funds. They had been forced to sell their prized property in Austin to cover the shortfall. Their empire still stood, but its foundation cracked, and the whispers never stopped. In the world of finance, reputation is oxygen. Once gone, it is not easily replaced. I did not gloat. I did not need to. My satisfaction came quietly. I established a scholarship for first-generation accounting students funded entirely from the trust income. I joined a team investigating predatory lending in housing markets, work that mattered to me more than any dividend could. And in time, I realized that purpose fills the spaces where belonging once seemed absent. My chosen family grew around me. Maya, ever patient, became not just a friend, but a sister in the truest sense. Colleagues invited me into their homes. Neighbors brought bread and laughter. No one asked me to prove my worth. No one erased my name from photographs. Occasionally, a message from Evelyn would appear, a carefully crafted line. Can we meet? Your father is unwell. Or, it is time to heal. I read them, then set the phone aside. Healing cannot grow where trust was uprooted. It must begin on new ground. I did see Richard once more in a courthouse corridor after a hearing. He looked older, diminished. For the first time, his voice carried no command. Your grandmother would be proud, he murmured. I nodded, nothing more. Pride had always been theirs to ration. I no longer needed their measure. Evenings in my studio, I sometimes replay my grandmother's video. Her eyes steady, her words gentle. Do not be afraid. Choose your own. I hear them not as instruction now, but as affirmation. I had chosen, and I had endured. To anyone listening, perhaps you have felt the weight of family expectations, the sting of dismissal. Perhaps you have wondered if your voice mattered in rooms that ignored you. Let me say this: blood can bind, but it can also blind. True family is built of respect, not obligation, of trust, not collateral. I lift my cup of tea to the window, watching the city pulse with its endless energy. For the first time, it feels like mine. Not because of money or name or duty, but because I stand in it as myself, free, unshackled, whole.